All right, folks. So let's say you are now ready to become a franchise owner. Take control of your life, your personal life, your freedom, your flexibility, control over your financial destiny. Sounds amazing. That's why people do it. But there's a little hidden component of this search process that we want to discuss today, and it is called your spouse. You didn't ask me if you should have got married. I would have probably given you a different opinion than everybody else, but you did it. Now here we are. So let's figure out how we incorporate our better half into this process. When do we do it? What happens if they're not really feeling it, right? That's what we're going to talk about today. First, I always want a kind of quick reminder of why the heck should you listen to me? Well, maybe you shouldn't, but maybe you should. My name is Tim Parmeter. I am the founder and CEO of FranCoach. FranCoach is a national search firm dedicated to working with individuals like yourself interested in owning a franchise. We're partnered with over 600 franchises in about 70 different industries, and our goal is mainly to help educate you properly on franchise ownership to determine if this is the path for you. If so, we're going to help you make sure you find the best fit for you. Okay. Now, it's great that you're interested, but what about your spouse? When should they get involved in this process? Should they get involved with this process? And what happens if there are some issues along the way? So first and foremost, I'm going to tell you every time you listen to me, I am going to do this thing called tell you the truth. I'm not going to blow smoke up your behind. We're not like all fluff and all rainbows and unicorns or all the other extreme of like everything is awful. In franchising, I don't care what the question or topic is, there is no one size fits all answer. It is all about you. It is an incredibly personalized and individualized process. Same thing goes with the spouse. So when do we do this? So a lot of the folks we work with are coming to us from the corporate world, right? So you kind of have to turn off that corporate brain when we first start talking, but I want you to leave it on for a second as we talk about the spouse. So let's say, for instance, you are going to a job interview. If you're sitting there and you're, man, I'm really excited about this job, and they call you back, all right, hey, Tim, come on back, let's talk. You're like, hey, I brought my wife, can she come sit in? That's not going to go well for you. Okay. It's slightly better than saying, hey, my mom came, can she come sit in with me? But let me help you. You're not going to get the job. So when we have our corporate brain on with this, we think this is my search, not my spouse's. She's not allowed. He's not allowed. But that's not the case. Okay. So in franchising, you want to think about this from a couple of perspectives. First off, even if your spouse is never, ever going to work a day in the business, it is still the family business. So we're going to want some level of involvement. Even your spouse is like, no, honey, it's awesome. Go do it. Figure out what you want. I will promise you that the franchisor at some point is going to say, no. We want your spouse involved in at least a little bit of this process. Okay. So we understand that it's going to be basically required that they are involved. Okay. Because this is really, again, this is your business, but it's the plural you. It is the family situation. Okay. So if the spouse is going to be involved in any way, shape, or form, even if it's on a part-time basis, we are going to recommend that they are involved as much as possible throughout this process. So they're allowed to have their input in, again, maybe you're going to be full-time and they're going to be semi-absentee. Well, they still have 10 hours a week, right? I don't know about in your household, but in mine, if all of a sudden I'm like, no, let me speak for my wife, right? Like next time I'm doing one of these, I'm gonna have a black eye. So we want to make sure that they are involved no matter how well we know them. We want their involvement. Hey, in my 10 hours a week in this business, these are the things I would like to contribute. These are the things that I am good at, that I'm willing to and able to do. Okay. So it gives us the ability to build out the best possible scenario for you both. Then when we're talking to the franchisors, as many of those calls as that spouse can be on, the better. Okay. So, but that's not always possible. Spouse isn't always available to be on every single call. I will help you if you're both fully involved. There is no choice. You're both going to be fully involved in the process. That's how it works. It's, again, go back to the corporate world. You're both essentially interviewing for this position. Okay. Now, what if the spouse is not involved in the business, will not be involved? They've got their own thing going on. This is yours. When do we bring them in? Well, again, there's no wrong answer. They can be involved the whole time. We have had spouses sit on basically every single call that wasn't really going to be involved in the business, but they wanted to be involved in the journey to help hear, listen, ask questions, basically kind of feel out the vibe of that franchise. That is totally fine. But it's also okay if maybe they can't do that and you're vetting them through there. You're trying to bring back the information and share it with your spouse later in the evening, over the weekend, whatever. The problem with that is this. You are now relaying information that franchisor told you. They've had that same call, not to burst your bubble. They've had that same call, a dozen times this week, right? Alone. So they can kind of spit that stuff out in their sleep, whereas you're hearing it for the first time, along with the information you're hearing from 3 other franchises, and now trying to relay that to your spouse. Like, to say that things are going to get missed and lost in translation is an understatement. Then all of a sudden the spouse asks you a question and you don't know the answer to that, right? You're like, hey, honey, I'm all excited about this franchise. Let me tell you about it. And then they start asking 2 or 3 questions. And you're like, crap, I don't know that. I forget that. Maybe we just haven't gotten to it in the process, but it creates fear because there's fear comes from the lack of information. So they're not involved with that, right? So it's okay. And we've had times where we've had people further down the line, we've literally brought a spouse back in with the franchisor to basically have a catch-up call, right, with the franchise. Let the franchisor explain everything higher level. Let that spouse ask some questions, right? All of those things are acceptable to kind of loop them back in. The last step in this process, when we're in what we call the discovery process, when we're vetting the franchises, is you'll hear the term meet the team day. Sometimes it's discovery day. A lot of times it's in person, but they can be virtual as well. This is the place where, if at all possible, I would recommend the spouse be there with this. This is when you are getting a chance to meet the entire team of the franchise. It's kind of that last step in the vetting process. It is also their last step in the process of vetting you. So this is where the spouse is really key. So they can, even if it's less information and just kind of the spidey senses of, hey, these people really feel like they know what they're doing. I get the sense that they're going to have our back and really support us through that. You feel like you're in the right room. That matters greatly in this journey. So having the spouse there for that is fantastic. But let's be honest, let's look at it the other way. The franchise now is seeing your main support person. If they're sitting there going, whew, okay, I don't know if this is going to be good for us either. It allows them to be able to make that judgment, right? So for you, now you're sitting there with your spouse going through that entire day. And even if that's the only thing that they do, it's going to be hugely valuable from really, again, are we in the right room? Do we have the right people here to support us so we can have the level of success that we want as an owner, right? So that's key. So really, any way along the way is fine. Earlier, the better, but certainly towards the end, right? That's what we're going to look for. Now, what if, I don't care how much they're involved, the spouse is sitting there going, over my freaking dead body? What are you going to do? Well, let me start off by saying I am not a marriage counselor. And if I was, I would be the worst one ever. But there really is going to come a point, and this does not happen often. If we have them involved in this process, the fear comes from the unknown, the lack of information. So the more you feel like they are not on board, the more I would strongly recommend to get them involved as early and as often as possible. The information will curb the fear, right? But if you really get there, they're not going to be involved. They're going to tell you over my dead body. Then you know what? This is probably not for you, right? You're going to have to make a choice. Either I'm going to do it anyway and you're going to deal with it. Again, I'm not a marriage counselor. Or you're going to have to decide, right? And again, it's rare it comes to that. But what I would tell you, if you have any concern and fears, you're starting to work with us and you're like, well, I don't know if they're going to get on board with this, then we need to just pause. We need to have that conversation and we need to figure out how to get them involved. And either you understand you're doing it regardless. Okay. I'm not advising on that, but that's your option. Either you're doing it regardless or we stop the whole journey. Right. So that is key. It doesn't, again, it doesn't happen often, but it does come up. But anytime that there's that fear from the spouse, what I'm going to tell you is don't do the old thing. Ignore the problem and hope it goes away. It won't. So let's get that person involved again from the start. Let them hear everything firsthand. Let them ask the questions, express their concerns and fears. And really, ultimately, what it comes down to, and we've had this conversation, is here's the spouse that is wanting to do it. Here's the spouse that's concerned, right? Concerned spouse, do you trust your partner, right? Do they have a long track record of total failure? And they're going to say no. And they're going to kind of bow up and go, no, they're really talented when they can do X, Y, and Z. Great. Will they be doing X, Y, and Z in this franchise? Yes. Okay. Do you feel like the franchisor has the support they need and the training to help your spouse be successful doing X, Y, and Z, which you already said they're good at? Yes. What the hell's the problem, right? That's where the involvement to be able to hear everything, ask the questions, and frame it in that perspective. And then ultimately for everybody, as we're looking at this, is why are you even thinking about it to begin with? I hate my freaking job. I'm miserable. I'm stuck, right? Whatever those things are. I want more time with you, my spouse, my family, the freedom, flexibility. I want to be able to build wealth and equity in something, right? Well, you're not getting that in your job. So this is where that it becomes possible for you. So when we're talking about the spouse, when we're looking at this, if they're not involved in the business at all, and there's any fear or concern, don't push it off, get them involved right away. If they feel supportive throughout, obviously encourage them to be involved whenever they want, but we'll definitely loop them in at the end to ask any questions and certainly attend Meet the Team Day if at all possible. If the spouse is involved in running of the business, really there's no choice. You guys both need to be doing this journey. And it's a fun journey to go through with your spouse to do this, because it is ultimately a family business. That's us. That's what we do, is we help you work through these problems so you can take control over your life. Get out of that dead end job. I don't care how high you are. You're not going much higher than that. There's no room for growth. You're not truly in control of your life. So click here, book a call with us. There's never any fee to work with our team. We are here to help you create your better tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in.